Good evening and welcome in to Pregaming here on Oilers Nation. And no, there's no Bordzy today. He's living his best life in the Dominican. And don't we all wish we were living our best lives in the Dominican? But instead, you get me, Tyler Yaremchuk, and my good friend Zach Laing joining me for not just pregame, but postgame as well. Burning the old midnight oil, as they'd say, Zach.
Yeah, that's right, Tyler. Excited to be here. Exciting day for Oilers Nation and the Nation Network. Had their sauce launch this morning. That was an absolute blast to see with Ryder and Lisa. And yeah, going to be an interesting Oilers game tonight. Get to hear Jack Michael say Pavel Buchnevich in his really weird way that he does.
He goes hard into the Russian emphasis on that one.
Really does.
Anyways, we got a lot to get to today. As you all know over in the YouTube chat, the show is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. We'll take our stab at Bordzy's bankroll coming up a little bit later on, and things will give you your full lineup from either side of this matchup here. But first, the YouTube chat. I see you. I appreciate you. I see Austin, as he always is the first one in. He says, my ON fam, let's fire up this effing band. Bordzy's on vacay means we got to put in a little extra legwork while he's gone. Let's get the likes up in here. I enjoy that as well. Aaron dropped himself into the chat, said pregaming with Ty-Zai. Let's go. And that's actually, if we were like a 1-2 punch on a hockey team, that would be what they call us, Zach.
I like that. I think it's got a nice ring to it.
Simon says, start stacking those wins, boys. And yes, the Edmonton Oilers looking to get on a little bit of a roll. They are not an October team. They're also not necessarily a November team traditionally. They kind of like to wake up more towards the new year and when the calendar turns. But anyways, the Oilers tonight taking on the St. Louis Blues as they begin a little road trip through the Midwest. But they're coming off a victory over the Chicago Blackhawks. And Zach, that's kind of where I wanted to start with things today. I mean, I will not talk about this too much, but I think a lot of Oilers fans, sports fans, didn't really pay a ton of attention to that Oilers game on Saturday night. There were maybe some bigger sporting events going on, and at the risk of me getting very upset on camera, I will just say that, you know what, I'm ready to turn my attention to hockey. I'm happy to have this distraction of the Oilers tonight.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Bit of a tough weekend to say the very least on that front, but it was an interesting game against the Blackhawks. I actually had it up on my laptop. I had the Jays game on the TV, had the Oilers game on the laptop, so I was kind of catching some of the things that were happening. I think the one thing that was really nice to see was, it feels like the 5-on-5 lines are kind of a little bit set right now, especially that top six. I really like the look of that. And a big storyline for me right now around this team is Jack Roslovic. Really starting to heat up here as of late. Obviously, getting a bump up on that second line with Draisaitl and Podkolzin. I've liked the way that they've looked, and then scores a big power play goal in that game too. That was really nice to see. So excited for this one here tonight. This is the St. Louis Blues team that the Oilers always kind of feels like they always have a bit of a tough time against. But they haven't really had very much of a good start to the season this year.
No, and we'll get into all that. I like your point about Roslovic. I know you have a new piece up at Oilersnation.com, so we'll talk about some of those different angles, but just digging into that win over Chicago on the weekend, maybe a little bit of what we liked, what we didn't like. What was good to see is that the big guns showed up. The power play got a couple of goals. You mentioned the one from Roslovic. Obviously, Bouchard gets the overtime winner in that game as well. So it was nice to see a couple of Oilers back up to their old tricks. And it wasn't, a great game by them by any stretch, but it was encouraging to see the big guns just kind of put their foot down and go, hey, we'll get a couple here, power play, overtime. We'll do enough to get the win. And you know what? Stuart Skinner was good too.
He was. And I think Stuart Skinner's been good for the better part of the season. Like it feels like he hasn't necessarily been as big of an issue this season as he has, maybe in years past. And yeah, the power play starting to click. I mean, that's a big one, right? The power play was good for most of last season, but it didn't feel like it was the Oilers power play that we've known and loved. That's clicking at 33, 35%, can take games over. So getting the big guns going, especially get Evan Bouchard, the big game winner as well. Those are huge things for this team to kind of start clicking, right? You start scoring on the power play, get a little more confidence at 5-on-5, get the ball rolling that way.
You mentioned the lineup consistency, and that is something I will applaud Chris Knobloch for. I mean, it's frustrating at times when the Oilers, have a bad first period, and, they didn't have a brutal first period against Chicago. They were fine for the most part, but you didn't see Chris Knobloch go to any sort of a panic move. He didn't just go with Connor and Leon together. He didn't start shortening his bench, running 10-11 forwards and mishmashing guys around. What he did was kept things consistent. Roslovic, Draisaitl, Podkolzin played 13-27 together at 5-on-5. Mangiapane, McDavid, and Nuge were also north of 13 minutes. And Savoy, Henrique, Frederick were close to 8 minutes together at 5-on-5. It's been a while since we could say that three lines had all north of 7.5 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time. But let's start with the trio that led the way. Shots on goal were 8-1 in favor of the Oilers when Draisaitl, Roslovic, and Podkolzin were on the ice. And this kind of goes without saying when a lineup's going to be, or when a line is going to be that dominant. They all were a contributing factor to that success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Podkolzin has found himself stapled to Draisaitl for the better part of 2 seasons, and it's not because of his ability to put up points, which isn't necessarily a strong suit. It's the hard forecheck and getting those pucks and digging them out and finding ways to get it to Leon Draisaitl. That's what he does best. Jack Roslovic, he's starting to really turn it on here. I think it's 4 points in his last 5 games played, 2 goals, 2 assists. He's got something like 25 or 26 shot attempts in those 5 games too, which is really encouraging to see, because for how long have we talked about getting Draisaitl a shooter on his wing, right?
Yep.
Draisaitl kind of had to develop into a shooter of the puck himself, and thank the Lord he's a really good one at that. But now with a guy in Jack Roslovic here, especially at 5-on-5, who doesn't shy away from firing the puck, that's a really nice addition to that duo on that other side, because how many times were we waiting for a guy like Victor Arvidsson last year to kind of start to do that, right? So we'll see what happens here moving forward. I hope they kind of keep this lineup together. 53 5-on-5 minutes so far. They're outscoring the opposition 5-0. That's pretty good.
And that's, again, when you talk about only getting 10 to 13 5-on-5 minutes a game, like we're talking about a 5-game sample size now where you can sit there and go, okay, they've been pretty dominant. And it's got people dreaming a little bit. Earlier today on Oilersnation Everyday, Liam was already talking, what's an extension look like for Jack Roslovic? I think we need a little bit more time there. The next big test, as you said, keeping it together, it'll be what do they do when Zach Hyman's back? How do they shuffle things around? But again, that's maybe a little bit of a premature conversation for now. You touched on Roslovic. I want to talk about Podkolzin a little bit. If you could excuse anyone for having a slow start to the season, it would have been Vasily Podkolzin. He loses his father, flies back to Russia. He went back to Russia for, I want to say, a week, if not a little less than a week. Flies all the way back to Edmonton, gets in one more preseason game. Like, just everything that happened there, it was like, okay, you could tell the effort was still there, but he was just a quarter step behind everyone. As these games went on through October and we got towards the tail end of the month, he started to look like the Vasily Podkolzin of old. And on that Saturday night, I felt like it was vintage Pods. He uses his speed, draws a penalty shot, hits the goalpost on the penalty shot as well. That would have been a great moment if he could have scored. But he set up Draisaitl in front for that beauty spin around pass. And the other thing, and Liam pointed this out as an observation, was he isn't doing the thing that sometimes guys do when they go up with Connor and Leon, where he's, okay, where is he? Where is he? How do I get it to him? Oh, I got to get it off my stick. I don't want to play to die. He's actually holding on to the puck. He's keeping the cycle going. And those are things that Leon Draisaitl loves in his wingers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to last season, sometime in March, I think it was an Eastern road trip after a game against the New Jersey Devils. And Chris Knobloch was kind of asked something along the lines of like, why can't you guys seem to find people to play with Connor and Leon? And he kind of said something to the tune of, when players go up and play with those guys, they don't play their own style of game.
Yeah.
They get away from it. They're always looking to, dish off to Connor and Leon and let them facilitate the offense. When a guy like Vasily Podkolzin has done kind of the opposite of that, right? Mm-hmm. Take the bull by the horns and not be afraid to get in there. And that's what he's done so well. And I think a big reason why he's stuck with Draisaitl for as much as he has over the last 2 seasons. And even to Jack Roslovic's point, like he's another guy who is showing he's not afraid to take the initiative offensively, which is a really good sign of things. So, really encouraging stuff from this group.
Mr. Burns says, I'd say it's better than Vintage Pods. Sean Pang's article about the training he put in was really great. If you missed that, Sean had a chance to sit down with Vasily Podkolzin's trainer and talked about how, like, they had a training regimen and things to work on that was like, okay, if you're going to have success with Leon, this is where you need to get better. Really cool to hear a guy like that, and also makes sense why he would be willing to sign an extension when he was. A guy that feels at home here in Edmonton. And, first-round pick of the Vancouver Canucks, cast aside a little bit. Full credit for the Oilers for taking advantage of it or trying to take advantage of it here. But it's great to see how this has worked out, and great to see how not just Draisaitl of the Oilers fans have embraced Podkolzin, but also just great to see how Podkolzin's embraced being an Oiler. And again, you said take the bull by the horns. Yeah, like, I don't know if there's a lot of guys who go, ooh, I have a chance to play with Leon Draisaitl. I should build my summer training around what I can do to, like, keep that spot. It's a cool story.
It really is, and it makes so much sense when you really think about it. And it's great to see that level of commitment. You talk about Podkolzin fitting in. He's fit in so well here. Obviously, the climate in Edmonton, a little bit similar to what you get in Russia with the cold winters and stuff like that. But, even you see on YouTube, like the videos popping up of his Russian friends that have a media channel or whatever, doing interviews with Podkolzin in the Oilers locker room, like stuff like that. It's like, oh, wow, like, he's really really going all in on Edmonton here. And it's nice to see, I think Podkolzin also realizes that, this could be kind of a last chance opportunity for him in the NHL, right? So he's clearly working hard, clearly trying to get better. And the fact that he's willing to kind of craft his game to fit alongside Draisaitl, you love to see something like that.
And now he's already turned it into, close to $9 million guaranteed on an extension. So who's complaining when, you got $9 million coming to tuck into your jeans over the next few years? I guess the next line I want to talk about a little bit, because I have a thing on Connor McDavid for later. Savoy, Henrique, Frederic. That game against Chicago was one of those games where, I don't like to open up natural stat trick or anything like that during the game. I like to really just zero in, okay, what are my eyes telling me here? And I liked them. I felt like Trent Frederic the last few games has had a good step. Adam Henrique, this is maybe a bit of an unpopular opinion, but he's looked okay by my eyes, but the numbers aren't backing it up. My point is that trio, I liked them. Savoy had that slap shot in the first period that was generated off of, Frederic just kind of creating some havoc on the forecheck. And I was like, okay, I think I like those three. Then I go look at the numbers and the numbers suck. And I'm like, okay, but I think there is something there, which is why I'm happy Chris Knobloch's not disrupting it.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're kind of at the point in the year where it's like, okay, it's time to build some chemistry and really figure out who fits with who. I've liked Adam Henrique's game so far this season. Offensively, it felt like he's been a lot more involved. He seems a little bit quicker, which is kind of a surprising thing considering, he's at the advanced age of his late 30s. It's nice to see him have a little bit more pep in his step so far this season. And defensively, I thought he's been fine too. The underlying numbers, I wouldn't put a whole ton of stock into it. It's still so early in the season.
It's barely November.
13 games in. I usually don't start to dig into that kind of stuff for a little bit here, but you'll start to see those sample sizes grow and really figure out what you got there. Savoy, I thought he's looked good as well. And I do agree about Frederic. It feels like these last couple of games, he's kind of starting to turn it on a little bit more. I think the thing for me with Frederic is I want to see him more offensively involved, right? He's only got the one goal on the season, and it was that breakaway against New York Rangers, which was obviously a great goal. But it doesn't really feel like he's generating much offensively in the offensive zone right now. So, hey, good opportunity to do so here against a Blues team that's really struggling defensively.
Yeah, really struggling to get a stop as well. We'll talk about Jordan Binnington and his struggles later on in the show. But for Frederic, I agree. The consistency, you said it's time to start getting some chemistry going here. I think for Frederic, consistency and what you want from him and the role he's going to play. I do credit them for being like, okay, maybe he's a fit next to Connor and Leon because, I said this at the time, if you're going to sign a guy for 8 years, might as well figure out if he's the next Patrick Maroon. Yeah. And they gave it a legit, honest look, but I now wonder looking back on it, because it obviously didn't work, if that set him back from the role they now want him to, where it's like, okay, now you got to go back down to the bottom six, fewer minutes, fewer puck touches, all of that. But I think for him, it's just consistency in the role, and people can bitch and moan about 8 years and a $3.8 million price tag and all of that. At the end of the day, if you get a hardworking third-line physical player who's going to come out and get you, let's call it anywhere from 13 to 17 goals a year, that's ultimately going to be worth $8.8 million throughout the duration of that 8-year deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the term was the biggest sticking point for me on the Frederic signing. The dollar figures, I'm not too concerned about that. Like you said, over the years, that's going to be a very low amount compared to what guys get around the NHL. And, at the end of the day, too, the Oilers have some ways out of the contract if things really go south, in a couple of years, too. So he's here for the long haul. He's committed to Edmonton. I think that was a good sign, too, the fact that he was willing to do that. But you make a really interesting point. I didn't really think about that, how different playing in that top six is versus that bottom six. And Frederic, of course, been a guy who's largely been a kind of middle six, bottom six guy during his time with the Boston Bruins. So hopefully now he's another one of those guys that can kind of get the ball rolling here.
And it's not like, again, they brought him in and he's never scored before, or he was a top six guy. Now they're trying to shoehorn him in. He was scoring 18 goals with James Van Riemsdyk on his wing. There's a player there who can produce and generate some offense, but you're right. You want to see it a little bit more consistently. You want to see him generate. Let's turn our attention to the blue line and some trade rumors that popped up over the weekend. You covered it for us at the site, but Elliot Friedman coming out on Saturday during his ever-popular headline segment and saying that the Oilers are trying to find a soft landing spot for Troy Stecher. Surprising for me because I didn't think Troy Stecher would have trade value. I thought they would just put him on waivers, cross their fingers, hope he went down, and he stays in the mix as organizational depth. Obviously, Stan Bowman would know better than I do what kind of value this guy has around the league. If they think he's going to get claimed, it makes sense that they would shop him around and say, hey, we'll take a 5th, 6th round pick for the guy. If they can get that, I would say good on them. Although losing the organizational depth isn't great. But what do you make of the Troy Stecher trade rumors?
fascinating. Not entirely sure if I love them because I've really liked what Stetcher's done over the last few years. Personally, I don't know if I've seen enough from Alec Regula to like really feel great about him as a number 6-7 defenseman for this team. I get, he looked decent in the preseason, had a good first game or two there, and then obviously the concussion against the Vancouver Canucks that's kept him out of the lineup ever since. Evidently, the Oilers really like Alec Regula.
Yep.
Chris Knoblaw has talked him up quite a bit.
You don't give a guy a 2-year deal without seeing him play a game for your organization unless you clearly see something in him.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, in the front office, we trust, I guess.
Yeah.
In the coaching staff, we trust. It's kind of what you got to do. But I do agree with you. I was a little surprised to hear Troy Stecher being a guy that has value. But, hey, look at his resume. He's bounced around so many teams for so many years, and he's been a good soldier. I'm sure there's teams out there that'd be willing to give up maybe a late round pick for him. Of course, Edmonton got him for a 4th round pick, also getting a 7th from the Arizona Coyotes. Everybody remember them? Good fun. So, I would imagine that would probably be something that would be roughly the return. But I know there's some other reports that other defensemen could be in the mix too. Like I know Ty Emberson's name has kind of been floated around there too. I think if it comes down to it, one of the two, Troy Stecher is probably the guy that I'd be looking to move first there. I've really liked Ty Emberson so far this season.
Yep.
I think he's signed for another season after this one as well. So, and Troy Stecher, of course, making $787,000 UFA at the end of this season.
Yeah, I agree with you on Emberson. Like, there's upside there. And I can even understand why maybe they're hesitant to risk putting Regula through waivers, because what if another organization likes him as much as you do, and he's signed for another year at $775? So, like, you don't want to lose out on that value contract. Like, if Emberson and Regula are your 6-7 for this year and next year, making a touch over $2 million, you're in a good spot. But you're right when it comes to being scared of losing Stecher. I don't want Troy Stecher to be in my playoff lineup necessarily. But I also know from watching these Oilers, especially last year, forget 6 defensemen, forget 7 defensemen. You need 8 defensemen to get through a playoffs. You need maybe 9 defensemen to get through a playoff run. And like, what's going to happen if, again, you got to plan a little bit. If you fail to plan, then you'll just outright fail. What happens if halfway through round 2 of the playoffs, 2 defensemen go down, and what are you running, Atro Lepinen in a playoff game? Like, I don't. Preseason darling, but I'm not getting ready to play Atro Lepinen. People forget, and just because I see you pull up the roster, Josh Brown played a playoff game last year. That's a scenario we could maybe try to avoid. So I think you need to find a way to keep some organizational depth here. And my fear is you trade Stecher, you do right by him, get a 6th round pick and send him to another contender. And then you're sitting there at the deadline going, we need to go trade a 4th round pick now to get some organizational depth on our blue line. Like, I would love to see them just try and figure out a way to keep everyone in the mix. I know it's easier said than done because there's a roster crunch and there's also a cap crunch coming when Zach Hyman comes off LTIR, but I don't know. These things sometimes sort themselves out, but I just don't want the Oilers to make an unforced error here and lose out on the depth.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. One thing that I kind of wonder too, and I know this has been an issue in years past, and admittedly, I haven't been as dialed into the Bakersfield Condors this year as I have in the past, but I know there's been issues with, having too many veterans down there on that American League roster. Sometimes you wonder if maybe that could be a reason why as well. Cam Dineen, he got called up late last season. I thought he looked okay. I think he's fine in a pinch. But at the end of the day, the Oilers, even if they kept Troy Stecher, we're probably going to be looking to add a depth defenseman at the trade deadline anyways, right? So who knows? Maybe you flip him for a 4th right now, and you flip that 4th for, I don't know, some random defenseman who can be a number 7-8 for you at the deadline, right?
Yeah, I guess. So again, trade rumors kind of swirling around right now. We know at some point Zach Hyman will return to this lineup, and when Zach Hyman does return to this lineup, they're going to have some decisions to make, but there are some other ways they can kind of get around that. You could put Kasperi Kapanen on LTIR. Word is he's going to be out for several weeks. Who knows when Matthias Janmark's going to be back playing games for this team? That scenario is kind of just getting weirder and weirder as we go on, because he was supposed to be playing preseason games, and it was like, he's out till the regular season opener, and now here we are a month into the season, and he's still not ready to go. We are sitting here doing our show live from Dogpatch in the beautiful Riverdale area. We'll have a couple of big screens on the game here, so if you're looking for somewhere to watch the game tonight, come on down and join us. We're doing our show from the DJ booth here. The vibes are great. Got some old school records up behind us, which, if that's your thing, I mean, I think there are some pretty cool ones. Like, look at this. We got a Beatles record in there.
Hey, Abbey Road.
That's a pretty famous record.
Classic.
That is
That's
a classic. Anyways, come on down to Dogpatch. Join us. Someone just got food brought somewhere around here, and it smells absolutely delicious. I can vouch for the menu here. It is top-tier stuff. But let's keep cruising along with our show with the regularly scheduled programming and give the people their Wilhauk beef jerky need-to-know information. Speaking of tasty, only the finest tasting meat products earn the Wilhauk name. Made from 100% pure Alberta beef, Wilhauk is aged, seasoned, smoked, and marinated to savory perfection. They will gladly fill orders of any size. Find their jerky, sausage, and other products out of their Leduc location or online. Go to wilhaukbeefjerky.com. And Zach, you talked about the Oilers' recent success against the St. Louis Blues, and it's actually kind of interesting to look. Over the last 3 years, they've been very good against St. Louis, 7-3-2. But in St. Louis is where things kind of just plateau off a little bit. A 3-2-1 record over the last 3 years in St. Louis, which for me, I don't know if it's the seat color. I don't know if it's the camera angle. It feels like such a vibeless arena. To me, it is right up there with, and maybe this is a good one for people in the chat, what rinks do you hate watching the Oilers in? San Jose sucks. St. Louis sucks. Where else do I not like? Dallas is a super low camera angle, but I get used to it eventually. Where else do we not like to watch the Oilers? Who are just the awful, vibeless?
The New York Islanders.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's
yeah. I'm happy we got that one out of the way. You got one, Brett?
The Minnesota Wild.
Ooh.
I don't like the XL Energy Center.
It's too much green. Everything's so dark. Anyways, I don't like watching games in St. Louis. Did I hear the Blues from Saskia are on a 7-game losing streak? They are. Also, the Blues and not a particularly good home team. So far this season, the St. Louis Blues are 1-4-2 on home ice. 1 win in 7 home games for St. Louis. You even look since the beginning of last season, they are 21st in the NHL in home points percentage. So the Oilers over the last 3 years have played very well against St. Louis as a whole. And while they've been a bit more average in games in St. Louis, which used to be called, I believe, the Purina One Arena. I think it was named after the cat food.
Well, you know a thing or two about cat food, wouldn't you, Tyler?
You know what? I love that one up for you, but I just have a weird memory of like playing the video games when I was younger and like Doc Emmerich on those old games being like, or Jim Houston, sorry, being like live from the Purina One Arena. I swear to God, I think they used to be owned by the cat food company. It's called the Enterprise Center now, so there you go. We'll be a bit more historically accurate. But the Blues, not very good on their own home ice since then. A couple of notes on this St. Louis Blues team. They went and added Pius Suter over the offseason. And he's been pretty good. Tied for second on the Blues with 7 points following a career-high 46-point season with Vancouver. And listen, we'll take a step aside from Oilers and Oilers and Blues for a second to shit on the Canucks because I think people don't mind that. The fact that they are sitting here right now with like Nils Aman playing top 6 center minutes for them while they took on Evander Kane's contract and gave up an asset to do so, which caused them to have to let Pius Suter walk. It's the most mind-boggling bit of management I can remember in the NHL over the last little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't know what the hell's going on out there in Vancouver these days because, the talk around town is that Alex Wenberg is their top trade target right now,
Sure.
Which is absolutely a terrifying proposition if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan. So, yeah, I don't know what's going on out there, but they certainly let a good one go because he's been having a really good start to the season. Kind of found a home on this second line tonight playing with Braden Shen and Jordan Kyrou. A good two-way center, good in the face-off circle. Certainly somebody that the Vancouver Canucks could probably use on their team right about now.
Yeah, speaking of transactions, one that also didn't make a ton of sense from me from the St. Louis perspective was them moving on from Zach Bolduc in that Logan Mailloux trade. With Mailloux having the history he did, and we don't need to get into that, I felt like he could have been had for a prayer. I feel like Montreal was loaded up with young defensemen. St. Louis gives up Zach Bolduc, a guy who scored 19 goals in his first full season in the NHL. I know 7 of them were on the power play, so sometimes that can kind of hinder things a little bit. But anyway, Zach Bolduc for Mailloux, that was a bit of a puzzling trade. And Mailloux is not, I don't even think he's in the lineup tonight.
He isn't. I think he's a scratch tonight.
Yeah. Again, they're playing like Matthew Kessel. We'll get to the lines in a little bit, but a couple of puzzling roster moves. St. Louis on the positive end of one when Vancouver let Pius Suter walk, but the Bolduc trade didn't make a ton of sense. They also went out and brought in old Nick Bukestad, old Jugsy, former Edmonton Oiler, who's off to a decent start. 3 goals on the season for Nick Bukestad.
Yeah, he's probably going to end up scoring one tonight. He always seems to be the guy that scores against the Edmonton Oilers whenever they play him. Back to Logan Mailloux really quickly.
Yeah.
In 95 on 5 minutes so far this season, the Blues have been outscored 10-1 with him on the ice. that is absolutely abysmal. And Bolduc's been having a
Yikes.
great start to the year out there. Certainly not going to complain about that trade tonight because of how effective Bolduc has been. But yeah, some weird things going on with St. Louis as well as they kind of try to figure out what they want to do next. Of course, a couple of old friends, Dylan Holloway and Philip Broberg, also not off to the hottest of starts this season for the Blues either. So going to be an interesting rest of the year for St. Louis as they try and figure out exactly who and what they are right now.
If you are hearing the name St. Louis Blues and you go, hey, didn't they sign Milan Lucic over the summer? They did give Milan Lucic, for some reason, a PTO. They then kind of ended the PTO because they said he was hurt and then said, we'll circle back later. And then I just don't think they're ever going to circle back. It's probably the end of Milan Lucic's career. But again, the fact that the St. Louis Blues were willing to do that, they also, again, they signed Bukestad. Like, they took some weird flyers. It kind of maybe shows you how little confidence they had or the concern level that they had in their forward group coming into the year, which is interesting because goal scoring hasn't been what sunk them. It's actually goaltending. But really quickly here, talking about the goal scorers, one guy that you absolutely need to watch on the St. Louis team is Robert Thomas. Over his last 6 games against the Edmonton Oilers, Robert Thomas has 9 points in that stretch. He is really good, and he is a guy who could be making a push for the Olympic team this year.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been a bit of an Oilers killer. So has our friend Pavel Buchnevich. 16 games played, 6 goals, 9 assists, nice 15 points in them against the Oilers in his career. Jordan Kyrou, Braden Shen, both guys that have also had success playing against the Oilers. So if there was a night where the Blues were maybe looking at the schedule and saying, hey, this is a game we usually can get up for. Let's see if we can get the offense rolling because, that's kind of been their biggest issue this season is they're generating a lot of chances. They're just kind of really failing to capitalize on them. And, of course, you mentioned the goaltending a little bit earlier as well. Joel Holfer and Jordan Binnington have both been pretty terrible to start the season as well. So it's been some tough sledding out there to say the very least.
Yeah, I think we could see a lot of goals tonight for that reason, for the Pickard reason. We'll talk about that. But in the last 3 years, again, against the Oilers, I'll say the names one more time. Thomas, Buchnevich, Kyrou, and Dylan Holloway, all a point per game better in these head-to-head matchups. Flipping that over to the Edmonton Oilers, they have a couple of guys who are a point per game or better against the Blues, but it's the usual suspects. Leon Draisaitl, 6 points in his last 5 games, and Connor McDavid has absolutely torched the St. Louis Blues over the last 3 seasons. In 6 games against the Blues, he has 15 points. He is averaging 2 assists per game and has 3 goals in that span as well. So Connor McDavid has been on another level against St. Louis, and that brings me into our storylines and our keys to victory for tonight. The storyline I want to talk about here as we begin the back half of Pregaming live from Dogpatch is Connor McDavid maybe getting back on track. Again, the numbers have been good for Connor McDavid. He has 17 points in 13 games. That's going to be, north of a 100-point pace. He's fine, and I keep feeling the need to add that caveat, add that disclaimer to any time you're going to be even close to talking negatively about McDavid or criticizing McDavid. You need to be like, whoa, just so everyone knows, we know he's still Connor McDavid, but the processor looked a little off early in the season. There were plays that he usually makes that he fumbles, and he just wasn't quite as crisp. I think that game against Chicago, the Draisaitl power play goal, he made a really nifty cut inside, then kind of bulldozed the guy and made a pass. It felt like McDavid was buzzing at a more McDavid-esque level against Chicago, and that could be coming at a very bad time for the St. Louis Blues.
Yeah, absolutely. He's starting to shoot the puck more, too, which is really good to see. 14 shots on goal in his last 4 games, totals of 3, 6, and 5. That is what we really wanted to see from Connor McDavid. You had the stats last week, about his goal scoring rate and his shot attempt rate going down. Well, he's shooting the puck a lot here as of late, taking a lot of attempts as well. So that's really encouraging to see because, of course, all the talk was this summer McDavid was going to be shooting the puck a little bit more. Hadn't really followed
and that talk was coming from him.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. He was the one who was saying, I want to shoot the puck more. Didn't do a lot of that early on this season. Had that weird stretch with that road trip where nothing was seemingly going right. But it does feel like he's kind of found his stride, so to speak, here once again, especially in the offensive zone. So, a couple of nice performances, 3 assists against the Blackhawks on Saturday, rather. Let's start to see some goals coming. There's only been 2 games this season in which he has a goal scored. This feels like a night where, the Oilers could really use him taking charge, taking advantage of that poor goaltending that the Blues have had and firing from everywhere.
Yes, absolutely. So again, maybe a little hint there to our bankroll for later as we'll try to win some money on this. But McDavid kind of similar to the Oilers, where like this is not a horrendous start. For the Oilers, this is not a bad start. It's an average. It's a mild start. And, you know, in past years, we used to have to do the whole, we are an 8-game heater away from solving all our problems. And that's not the case for McDavid or the Oilers. If McDavid has an 8-game run where he is supernova McDavid and he has 24 points in 8 games, then we're going to be sitting here going, and this will be very fun to do. And I do think we'll get there. 140? Is he going to be 150 again? Like, he'll get us up to that point. And for the Oilers in past years, they needed 8 in a row just for us to be like, whew, okay, we're going to make the playoffs. This start being mild, not horrendous, has set them up where if they can go on that midseason heater now, or maybe it starts in November this year, we could be talking about a team going, all right, can they win the West?
Absolutely. And I absolutely think that they are a team at the end of the day that can do that. And, you know, it hasn't been a great start to the season. Everybody knows that, right? Oiltober and everything, you know, that we've talked about here at Oilers Nation with how this team struggles early on in the season. You know, these last couple of games here, it feels like they've kind of started to turn the corner and they're stringing together a couple of actually good games.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you want to see from this team here. Listen, it doesn't take much for the Edmonton Oilers to get hot and get going. You know, admittedly, it is a little bit of a difficult schedule here coming up for them. You know, tonight they're playing in St. Louis against the Blues. Tomorrow night they are going to be visiting Dallas, who may be without Jake Ottinger, mind you. You know, quick 2-game homestand coming up next Saturday and Monday, and then they've got the big Eastern Conference swing: Philadelphia, Columbus, Carolina, Buffalo, Washington, Tampa Bay, Florida. That's a tough stretch, right? And I think that's a stretch where I'd really like to see the Oilers start to turn it on. You know, historically, that swing has never been the best for the Edmonton Oilers, usually breaking out around 500 when they come back home. But that's an opportunity right there to kind of find a way to beat up on some of these teams and build that confidence even more than they have over the last number of games here.
Yeah, Sesky says we had a lot of roster changes and injuries. We are okay. And yeah, again, we talked about that earlier with guys finding their roles and identities on this team, and we didn't even really touch on the young guys there. So my storyline tonight is Connor McDavid. My key to victory, it's 2 things. Connor McDavid, I'll stick with that. I would like to see Connor McDavid dominate. I know I'm a bit of a broken record on these shows, but when I watch the Oilers play, God damn it, I like my best players to be my best players. But the other thing I'll say is, Calvin Pickard, just don't be bad tonight.
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there, Tyler. It has not been a great start to the season for Calvin Pickard. You know, there's obviously the talk of the Edmonton goaltending situation. You know, more rumors coming out this weekend. Ryan Rishaug mentioning that, you know, if there was a trade where the Oilers would move out Stuart Skinner, the Oilers would do it in a heartbeat. I just don't think that's the right move. I really genuinely don't. You know, Stuart Skinner on the season so far has got a .896 save percentage. Oh, no, hold on a second.
He actually got it back up to a dead even 900.
Yes, you're right. Dead even 900, slightly above the league average of 895. You know, 2.5 goals against average. Calvin Pickard, on the other hand, 846 save percentage, 3.5 goals against average. This is the real kicker for me, though. Stuart Skinner, 2.97 goals saved above expected. Calvin Pickard, negative 1.68. You know, Pickard was a guy who was breaking even in that range last year, and so was Stuart Skinner. You know, that's kind of your underlying numbers metric for goaltenders in terms of how well are they doing above average.
Because you can stop 10 shots from the blue line with no traffic, and it's save percentage weights them the same. So I like that you bring up that number.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it paints a picture of, you know, Stuart Skinner has actually been having a good season. You know, the league average rate for that number is an even 3. So he's pretty much been about a league average goaltender this season. So, you know, Pickard is the concerning one for me. Let's see what he can do out there tonight. You know, and then we'll see what happens moving forward here. But, you know, I got to wonder, like, how many more bad games from Pickard the Oilers are really going to let kind of slip away from him.
Yeah, well, here's another thing that's complicating it. Go look at Connor Ingram's game logs in Bakersfield. He's allowed 5 goals in 4 straight games. His most recent one yesterday, he allowed 5 goals on 20 shots. If Connor Ingram's not playing, like, I know that there isn't the angle that the organization is considering where they do not want to disrupt the chemistry. The guys, Connor McDavid, the core group, they love Calvin Pickard. They understand and recognize what he did for them the last 2 playoffs. The organization is only going to take this plunge, and I really think you only get one shot at it. They're only going to take it if they are 100% convinced Connor Ingram is ready to go. 4 straight bad games for Connor Ingram. I mean, I think Calvin Pickard can probably sleep pretty good for the month of November.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this isn't going to be something that's going to be a quick decision or anything like that, but within the next couple of months, then we'll start to see how it looks. Chris Novel has talked about it before. The Oilers have a very regimented goaltending schedule. They have things mapped out for pretty much the entire season of which goaltender is going to play where. And of course, with so many back-to-backs coming up this month, 1, 2, 3 of them, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Calvin Pickard to play here. So going to be interesting to see what happens here, but it feels like this is a night where, the Oilers could really use a win from him.
Absolutely. Let's keep the goalie conversation going, Brett. I'm going to switch up the order on you a little bit and get to our starting goaltenders that are brought to you by Odd Company Brewing and the Nation Beer Everyday Lager, a crisp, clean lager crafted not just for game day, but for every day. Find one at your local liquor store, or here's a fun hint, find one by coming to Dogpatch. I'm enjoying a crispy one right now for you to all see on stream. We got it on tap here at Dogpatch. So, let me taste a little. Oh, yeah, that's good. That's real good. The starting goaltenders for tonight, we just talked about Calvin Pickard and his numbers. He has only faced the Blues once as an Edmonton Oiler, and he did get the win. He stopped 23 of 26. If he allows 3 goals tonight, here's a bold prediction. The Oilers will win the hockey game. Why? You mentioned those goals saved above expected numbers. They're bad for Calvin Pickard. Holy shit, they're way worse for the St. Louis Blues. Jordan Binnington's going to get the start tonight for St. Louis. His numbers on the year, an .860 save percentage and a .321 goals against average. And I peeked over your shoulder. Those numbers are bad. Yeah,
for Binnington on the season, negative 6.77 goals saved above expected. Joel Hofer not much better at negative 5.59. Goaltending has been a significant issue. I do the DFS hockey report Monday to Friday with Brock Segan on the Daily Face-Off Fantasy and Betting channel. And I kind of have this rule right now when I'm building my daily fantasy lineups. Anytime a team is playing against the St. Louis Blues, I'm just going to play all of the players from the other team because they have absolutely not been able to stop anything. And I think it's been a huge reason why they've been as unsuccessful as they've been to start the season. These numbers are really bad. And again, when you think about the bigger picture, you talk about Robert Thomas a little earlier and the Canadian Olympic team. What does this mean for Jordan Binnington, as the guy that was kind of going to be penciled in as the guy for Team Canada here? So some fascinating stuff in the bigger world of hockey here, but yeah, really rough start to the season.
Put you on the spot right now. Doug Armstrong comes in. He's got a gun. He holds it to your head. He says, you got to pick the 3 goalies for the Olympic team right now.
Stuart Skinner. Marc-Andre Fleury. I don't know.
I think it's criminal if Logan Thompson's not there this time.
It has to be Logan Thompson.
When Montembeault is struggling, Aiden Hill can't stay healthy, and Jordan Binnington sucks right now. If you do not bring Logan Thompson, who's been the best Canadian goalie for now over a calendar year, I said this the other day with Jeff Merrick. I said it's malpractice. You're clearly valuing feelings over winning a gold medal at that point because him and Aiden Hill might not get along. Bruce Cassidy maybe doesn't. Doug Armstrong's got to bring his guy. What are we doing here as a country? We do not have any good goalies, or we do not have many good goalies. In fact, you could argue we maybe only have one. It's Logan Thompson. He needs to be there. Binnington, Montembeault, one of them's played their way off this team.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a borderline constitutional crisis, the goaltending tragedy that's been going on in Canada for the last number of years here. Logan Thompson probably should have been the guy at the Four Nations too. Yep. Thankfully everything worked out in our favor at the end of the day there. But yeah, I think he's the guy who's absolutely got to be there come next February.
The St. Louis Blues probably breathing a little sigh of relief that they avoid Stuart Skinner tonight. His career numbers against the Blues were sparkling, 4-1-2 with a 2.49 goals against average and a .916 save percentage. Although you don't blame the Oilers for saving Skinner for the Dallas Stars, who he owns in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So again, I like the way the Oilers are going about this. When you're a team that's as high caliber as the Oilers, and I've said this line a bunch on O&E this year, like Edmonton's A game is better than any other team in the NHL. Like if Edmonton plays their best, St. Louis could play the game of the year and they're not beating the Edmonton Oilers. So from that sense, I like going with your backup in game 1 when your team should be rested and should be at their best and trying to get both. Like you don't need to play scared and go, starter game 1, we'll go backup game 2, punt on that game, or maybe we get lucky, but let's really try to win game 1. Like, no, win both.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, too, Western Conference games, they really matter. St. Louis, they're pretty far down the standings right now. Dallas, they're not. They're a team that the Oilers are going to be competing for the top spot in the Western Conference for. So it makes sense to have your best goaltender up for that game. So no issues with this for me. I think this was a start for Pickard tomorrow night for Skinner. Makes a ton of sense.
All right, let's get to our lineup report. We'll begin with the Oilers lineup, brought to you by Oodle Noodle. Take advantage of the value menu deal today by heading to Oodle Noodle for a takeout order. Any signature premium box that you order allows you to take advantage of the value menu deal, which means you can add 2 green onion cakes, 5 spring rolls, or 6 wontons. I nailed that for just $2. Exceptional value. Really allows you to kind of manipulate the Oodle Noodle menu a little bit. If you go with the 2 green onion cakes, you have one of them with your main. When you order your main, you mega box it and double the meat. Now all of a sudden, you're finding ways to get multiple meals out of one Oodle Noodle order. It's just working smarter, not harder.
This guy Oodle Noodles, folks.
Yeah, I know how to Oodle Noodle. Anyway, shout out to Oodle Noodle, and shout out to Chris Knobloch for keeping the line combinations the same. McDavid, Nuge, and Mangiapane will serve as your top line tonight, or in the top 6, I should say, because Draisaitl, Podkolzin, and Roslovic, that was the trio Knobloch leaned on the most heavily last game against Chicago. So, again, this top 6 is kind of like a no-notes thing for me. I'm not sure what I would change. Eventually, do I want Matt Savoy to get a look up there? Sure. Eventually, do I want Ike Howard to get a look up there? Sure. Eventually, do you have to have a conversation with Zach Hyman's back? Yes. But for right now, I like this top 6.
Yeah, I think I agree with you here. I think if there was one spot that I would kind of point out that I'm not loving as much lately, it's Andrew Mangiapane. I felt like he's been fine. The problem is he's just had absolutely no shot volume so far this season. That's kind of been the biggest issue for me. He scored a couple of goals, which is good to see. Of course, that's what you want from a guy playing there on that top line. But it just feels like he hasn't really gotten as offensively involved as I was maybe hoping for.
Mm-hmm.
This was obviously going to be a chance for him to kind of rebound from a bit of a down year in Washington after, some tough and last year or two in Calgary as well. So I think if there was one player to be maybe critical of within this top 6, it'd be him. But I really agree with you, though. Otherwise, I wouldn't change anything right now. I think when Zach Hyman comes back, it's pretty easy to see what the fix is here in this top 6. And it's Mangiapane sliding down the lineup, which I think will absolutely be the right move.
Yeah, it will be. The only thing with Mangiapane where I want to give him some leeway is the conversation we had earlier where people change their games when they play with Connor and Leon. And it's so weird with Mangiapane because he knows how to shoot the puck. He started the season. He started hot. And when he shoots, it's like an absolute zinger. Like he's got a bullet of a wrist shot, but then he just doesn't use it when he plays with Connor McDavid. And I think maybe, again, he just needs a little bit of time to get comfortable enough to be like, you know what? I'm not looking off Connor McDavid when I shoot the puck. I'm actually doing the right thing and giving us a chance to get a goal. So there's your top 6, your bottom 6 tonight. Rico centering Frederick and Savoy. We talked about that line a little bit the other day. Noah Philp with Ike Howard and Curtis Lazar. Didn't really play a ton last game, either one of these 3. Ike Howard, again, I've liked him. Chris Knobloch seems to have liked him, but yet they're just not really moving him up the lineup all that much. Maybe one surprise for me is that they're holding out Tomasic for a second straight game in favor of Curtis Lazar. If Tomasic's not playing on the power play, I don't know. Maybe that's why they're doing this. They're opting for like a PK guy, another centerman who can maybe help Philp in the face-off circle a little bit. But I don't know. I'm surprised with the clock ticking on Hyman coming back. Someone might have to go down at some point. And I'm just, again, surprised that they're not giving Tomasic a few more looks to see what they have. Because I don't know. I think Tomasic might be the guy who goes down when Hyman's back.
It very well could be. I don't think it should be. I've really liked his game so far this season. Offensively, he's been very involved. I think defensively, he's been fine. Obviously in an adjustment period coming over from the European ice, but I felt like he's adjusted really well. To me, I totally get the point of having Lazar down there on that 4th line. I just don't know if he's necessarily the guy that I want there in the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
I think Tomasek makes more sense down there. I think he's just as good of a player as Lazar is at this point in time. So, we'll see what happens with this bottom 6 because, of course, you got guys like Janmark, Hyman coming back from injury. There's going to be some changes here in the very near future for this forward group as well.
Yeah, Philp and Howard had a couple of moments together last game. Nothing that was like crazy, but I did think they were fine. Ekholm with Bouchard, Nurse with Wallman, Kulak with Emberson are your D pairings tonight. We already hit on it that Calvin Pickard starts. You like that they're just going like with the forward group. I can understand not like beating your head. Them switching it up a little bit when they put Bouchard with Nurse, and it's just like, okay, we have enough sample size here. Ekholm and Bouchard can be elite.
Yeah.
They're going through a funk. It's unlucky. It's maybe bad goaltending. They will be fine eventually. And I think we also have enough of a sample size to know Darnell Nurse can't play with anyone other than Jake Wallman.
I totally agree with you. No notes on this blue line for me. I like the way this blue line is looking. I thought Ty Emerson has been better this year. I feel like Brett Kulak's been a little bit better this year as well. Jake Wallman, I mean, just has completely changed the complexion of this team, right? It's pretty evident how important he is to what this Edmonton Oilers team wants to be. You know, since he's come back from injury, it's felt like these Oilers have looked a little bit different. You know, Darnell Nurse, obviously a great skater of the puck, not necessarily the best passer of the puck, right?
Mhm.
And what is Jake Wallman so efficient at? It's getting that puck up the ice. He's got a great first pass, got a great set of wheels on him too. I've really liked his game. And Ekholm and Bouchard, I mean, it's just a matter of time until they turn it around, right? I mean, these two guys are way too good to struggle as much as they have up to this point this season.
The St. Louis Blues lineup for tonight, which is brought to you by our friends at Greta. And the boys are on the road. Why not head downtown and watch them on one of Greta's many screens? The arcade, the bar, the street food. It is all good at Greta, our go-to party spot downtown Edmonton. Here's the Blues lineup. Robert Tomer centers the top line with Pavel Buchnevich and Jimmy Snuggerud. Robert Thomas struggling a little bit to start the season. Just one goal on the year for him. So he's definitely a guy who is looking to get going. The second line's actually been the one who's probably done the most cumulative damage. Pius Suter has 4 goals. Jordan Kyrou has 4 goals. Braden Shen has a couple on his own. So 10 goals between that Blues second line. Dalibor Dvorsky, Oscar Sundqvist, and Dylan Holloway. Holloway as well. A little slow this year, not quite off to the rampant start he was a season ago. He's still fine. He's on a 41-point pace. He will score them 15, 16 goals if he continues at this rate. But surprising to see him down on the third line, especially when things haven't been going well for St. Louis.
Yeah, absolutely. They've kind of been blending their lines up a little bit on the fly here without Robert Thomas. I wonder if they kind of go a little bit more regimented with the lines that we're seeing here tonight. You know, for me, I think this top line is obviously the one to keep the closest eye on. You talk about Buchnevich and Thomas and their success that they've had against the Edmonton Oilers over the year, but it's really been that second line that's been driving play for them the best. They're a dangerous trio there. They're a trio to absolutely watch out for with Pius Suter, Braden Shen, and Jordan Kyrou. I mean, we talked about Pius Suter earlier, 4 goals and 7 points in 12 games played for him on the season. Some offensive numbers that he wasn't putting up in Vancouver for a number of years. So he's certainly somebody to keep an eye on. And one person that's not in the lineup tonight, Jake Neighbors. Massive loss. 6 goals and 7 points in 8 games so far for the Blues this season. And the offense hasn't quite looked the same without him, which is kind of crazy to think given how, young and still fresh on the NHL scene he is.
Yeah, fourth line, Bukestad, Matthew Joseph, and Alexei Torpchenko. And then quickly on Robert Thomas, because you did kind of hint at it there. He hasn't played since October 25th, but Matthew DeFranks makes it sound like he is in tonight. So I think he's good to go. I haven't been paying attention to any of the line combos, but Daily Faceoff is usually pretty nails with this stuff. Brock's on it, and it sounds like Robert Thomas is back in the lineup tonight. Philip Broberg with Colton Parayko on the blue line, the St. Albert product, playing with the former Oiler. Cam Fowler with Justin Falk, and Tyler Tucker with Matthew Kessel is the third pairing. So there you go. That is your lineup for the Blues. Of course, Jordan Binnington, who we talked about earlier, is getting the start for the Blues as they are on home ice and looking to snap out of a 7-game losing streak. Just quickly, Matthew DeFranks does confirm, the Blues beat reporter, that yes, Robert Thomas is going to make his return to the lineup tonight. So maybe a boost for the St. Louis Blues for this hockey game here. Before we get into our betting segment, let's take a quick peek at what's going on around the NHL. The Pittsburgh Penguins, what a story they've been, Zach. Off to the best start in the league, and they're off to a good start against the Toronto Maple Leafs. In Toronto, they are up 2-0 already. Erik Karlsson's got his first of the year, and Ben Kindle, who's been one of the better stories. I'm assuming he's in a lineup or two.
He's in a couple of them.
4th of the year for the Penguins rookie. He's been exceptional. That's the lone game that is underway right now in the NHL. But let's get to our betting segment. It is Bordzy's Bankroll, and it's brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the promo code NATION. Whatever the moment, whatever you bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. The Edmonton Oilers come into this game as favorites at -125. Considering how much the books usually love the Oilers, considering the Blues are on a 7-game losing streak, were you surprised to see a -125 number attached to this?
Feels a little bit short. I'm not going to lie. It does feel a little bit short of what I was expecting. But then again, the Blues, they are a team that can turn it around and turn it on. So it was a number that definitely did catch my eye, though.
Brett, you can flash up the 3 bets that I kind of had as the ones I want to keep an eye on. The first one I have is over 6.5 goals, Zach. Jordan Binnington can't keep pucks out of his net. Calvin Pickard, as much as I hate to say it, also can't really keep pucks out of his net. So I kind of like going with the over here. 6.5. I mean, it was 6 even when I looked at it earlier. Actually, it did move back down to 6 even. So we're getting this at 6 even, which means a 4-2 game gives us a push. I love going with the over in this hockey game.
Yeah, I like this one too. This feels like one of those higher offensive games for me here. So that's definitely probably my favorite of the three.
The next one I got is Evan Bouchard to go over 2.5 shots on goal. Bouch has only hit this in 2 of his last 5 games, but there were some struggles mixed in there. Last game, I know he kind of only hit it because of the 2 chances in overtime, but one thing that I didn't touch on earlier that I think could be a factor in Bouchard hitting this number, the St. Louis Blues have the worst penalty kill in the NHL, 32nd in the league. If the Oilers can get some chances with the man advantage, I think it could turn into a lot of shots on goal. So I like going with Bouchard to get 3 shots on goal at plus 100. And then the last one I have, Zach, is Connor McDavid to go over 1.5 points. It's minus 115. Talked earlier, he torches the St. Louis Blues. I think he's starting to get his rhythm and get into a little bit of a hot streak here. So McDavid over 1.5 points.
Yeah, I like it. He's starting to turn it on as of late for sure. And, doesn't take much for him to get going on a heater. Team in the Blues he's had success against in the past. I kind of like all 3 of these, actually.
Yeah, so there you go. Those are my 3 plays for Bordzy's bankroll. The YouTube chat will have their say and make their vote, but I am absolutely wagering on all 3 of these here tonight. Again, I think this should be a 4-2, 5-2, 4-3 kind of hockey game. So I have no problem with the over. And if the Oilers are going to score a lot of goals, they should get a lot of shots. So Bouch getting his shots, McDavid getting his points as well. Is there anything from a betting perspective that you like tonight? I saw you had old Bet365 open.
Yeah, one catch in my eye. Jack Roslovic plus 350 to score a power play point tonight. Obviously had the goal on Saturday night against the Blackhawks. Look, he's a guy who's offensively involved. He's showing some chemistry up there on that top 6 alongside Leon Draisaitl. And I thought he looked really good on that power play as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't hated David Tomasek as much as some people, like Liam, hate David Tomasek, but I did think it was interesting that you put a 20-goal guy in Jack Roslovic on that power play, and it instantly clicks and he scores. And, that goal looks simple enough, but that's a heady play for a guy to just kind of open himself up, put his stick right on the edge of the blue paint, and give his guy, whoever it was that passed to him, I'm blanking on it right now, just a perfect little angle to knock that puck in. So, again, I've liked Roslovic up there. You wrote the piece. People can read it at Oilersnation.com. But that is your bankroll for our friends at Bet365. I like the money line, too. Again, minus 25. Feels a little bit short. Looking at the YouTube chat, McDavid, 2+ points, got just over 70% of the vote, 72% of the vote. So there you go. That is our bankroll segment for today. Mr. Burns asked a question. Did everyone have a fun Halloween, Zach? Did you have a fun Halloween? I didn't. I watched the Blue Jays lose on Friday and Saturday. I was miserable. I was dressed as a zookeeper, and I was pissed.
Yeah, I was not in a good mood at the end of Friday night. I had a good start to the night. Went downtown with the fiance and with Coombsy and his missus.
Yep.
My fiance and I, we went dressed as Vincent Vega and Mia Wallace from the movie Pulp Fiction.
Oh, that's a good one.
So that was a really good one. Had a lot of fun up until the end of the Jays game.
Yeah, up until the end of the Jays game when it was just really bad. How was Coombsy handling it?
About as well as you'd expect. So not very well. We were both pretty down in the dumps on Friday night, but we went back and cranked some music for the rest of the night and kind of got out of that funk. We were gonna get together on Saturday and watch the game, but I was a little bit too hungover to kind of get off my couch, so I ended up just being sad at home.
Cody is in, and this is an interesting kind of bigger picture question that maybe we can wrap up the show on. I honestly want to know what you guys think will push this team over the top, and I guess my initial answer to that is, one, Zach Hyman coming back will help. But you've watched this team, basically the exact same roster. If anything, they have more upside built into this roster now with, the addition of a Roslovic and the kids in Howard and Savoy. I don't know why you think you need to question if there's something this team needs to push themselves over the top. I think they themselves are already good enough to do the job.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, you think back to the last 2 years, the first year in the Cup final, literally a goal away from tying it up late. Last year, it was tough, right? Not having Zach Hyman, the injuries, it felt like that might have been a bit of a shorter one. But I agree, man. I think the answers are within the room. I don't think there's one huge trade they're going to be able to swing that's going to dramatically change their Stanley Cup fortunes. They've already got one of the best teams in the league.
Yep.
They always are going to have among the shortest, if not the shortest odds to win the Stanley Cup every season. So I think it's just, maybe bearing down a little bit more in the Stanley Cup final if they're able to get back there this season. I don't really think there's much else beyond that.
No, again, we're talking about Hyman comes into the lineup. You're going to pop out Curtis Lazar. Janmark comes back. Maybe they take out Phil. Maybe they move down an Ike Howard. But like if you were to go, barring an injury, and try to add a piece to this forward group, because even the blue line, we're talking about how they're in a pinch on the blue line. Ekholm, Bouchard, Nurse, Wallman, lock it in top six. Kulak, Emberson, I trust. It's honestly, for me, it'll come down to whether or not they make a goaltending move. And if one falls into their lap. If that happens, then maybe I view their chances better. But like, I don't think there's a forward who they could add who I go like, whoa, I'm now X% more confident that they can win the cup. Like, I'm not sure if that moves there in season. Maybe it's Alex Tuck. I think it's too early to have that conversation. But anyways, we'll wrap up the show here. We'll maybe get into more stuff like that in the post-game show because Zach and I are both going to be back here for our post-game. We are live from Dogpatch, the beautiful bar that sits right below our Nation HQ. We are in the Riverdale neighborhood. It is a beautiful spot. If you couldn't make it tonight, Liam is going to be back here tomorrow. It's pizza night. The pizza here, like tonight, I'm going taco salad. I love the taco salad here. It's a nice little treat. But Tuesdays, the pizza, you've had it here. It is unbelievable.
It is. It's tremendous pizza. Last week, it was I was here last Tuesday doing pre and post with the fellas, and it was like a chorizo. Brett, do you remember what that pizza was exactly?
Yeah, it was queso pizza, they called it. Chorizo was on it. Queso, they had like creme fraiche or something on the top as well. Unbelievable, with a little bit of charcoal, made with charcoal in the pizza dough as well.
That's interesting.
Sorry, just to interrupt. Something came in real late just before we got to end the show here. So just in case.
Real late. Oh, you're putting it. Take that shit off. I thought it was even a lineup note. I'm not even
two-time.
To wrap up, Mr. Burns reminded us that we do this score prediction and anytime goal score. Brett, do you have one? Do you want to give us your score prediction and anytime goal score?
I do. I'll go 6-3 Oil. Because I bet both teams will score at least 2 goals, so at least that will hit. And I'll go, why not? Let's have a little chaser. Jack Roslovic, baby.
Ooh, another one for Jack Roslovic. Who do you like tonight?
I like it. I'm going to go 4-1 win for the Edmonton Oilers, and I was actually going to go Jack Roslovic too, so Brett and I, we're going samesies tonight.
All right, I will say 5. What did you say? 6-2?
4-1.
Oh, 4-1. I'll go 5-3 for the Oilers. I will say, I think Jake Wallman's going to unleash one tonight. A big clapper from Jake Wallman. So there you go. Cheryl's in. She says bread. Oh, she means Brett. I thought maybe she wanted Andrew Mangiapane to score. Anyways, Gil says 4-2 Oilers. Oggs and Log says McDavid opening goal. And I would love to see that. You know what? Maybe I'll even follow you on that on my Bet365. But that is a wrap on today's edition of the show. Zach and I both going to be back doing post-game immediately following the final buzzer. For the folks here at Dogpatch, for our boy Brett behind the scenes, that is a wrap on Pregaming with Bordzy. Enjoy the hockey game, everybody. We'll see you in the YouTube later on tonight.